Because of you, Sam, I am who I am now," Yvonne said, with teary eyes, looking up at me through her glasses. She leaned hard into my chest. "Please, stay with me, Yvonne." I couldn't hold back any longer and hugged her tightly. "My name is Sam Collins. I'm a 32-year-old single man. I'm currently a licensed clinical psychologist working at a mental care center. But recently, I've been thinking about quitting my job. In fact, my boss, the director of the clinic, saw me as a threat and constantly attacks me with a high-handed attitude. Sam, it's a miracle someone like you, a dropout, could become a clinical psychologist, taking 4 years to graduate from an online high school. What a laugh the clinic users would have if they knew. The center director said so and denied me everything. Actually, I had been terribly harassed at school in junior high and had to go to a private online high school instead of a regular one. I was so hesitant to interact with people that I often stayed at home. To be honest, my parents also thought it would be impossible for me to reintegrate into society. They probably thought that I, who was afraid of communication and stayed at home, would not be able to adapt to society. I myself could not imagine that a happy future would come my way. But I was blessed with a fateful encounter that changed me. The online high school had a male school counselor with a clinical psychologist license who was always there for me. "Sam, you're still young. You can start over as many times as you need. Take your time and think about what you want to do in the future," he encouraged me warmly. At the beginning of high school, I had already lost hope for my life, but this encounter made me start to see a brighter future. I want to become a clinical psychologist like him and help people. With that thought in mind, I started to study hard to go to the university of my choice. Though I was a high school dropout, I ended up taking 4 years to graduate, but I finally got into the psychology department of my desired college. University life was tough, but I was able to become a clinical psychologist, and I was very satisfied. However, to be honest, I was not satisfied with my situation. Ever since I started working at this mental health clinic, I've been mostly doing administrative work and chores, rarely counseling. According to the director, it's too early for you to do counseling. Of course, administrative work and chores are important, so I was happy to do them if needed. But being told I'm not qualified to do counseling was honestly hurtful. But the director was indeed well-versed in this industry and had a career. The fact that he evaluated me as too early to do counseling might mean that I was not suited to be a clinical psychologist. After finishing work, I sighed and walked alone through the city. It was already past 6 p.m., but it was still very hot, being August. In fact, a woman in her 50s who was walking in front of me had been wiping her sweat with a handkerchief. She seemed very hot, but I wondered if she would be all right. As I was worrying about her, to my surprise, she suddenly crouched down on the spot. "Are you okay?" I called out to her with concern, and she replied weakly, "I'm feeling dizzy. It might be heat stroke." In a faint voice, she told me this. "I'll call an ambulance right away," I said, and I called an ambulance on my cell phone. Fortunately, there was a hospital nearby, so the ambulance arrived quickly. I also went to the hospital with her. The woman received an 4 drip, and 2 hours later she recovered and was fine. She had become dehydrated due to heat stroke, but because treatment was given early, she was able to recover without any major issues. She thanked me many times. "You really saved me. I want to thank you again, so please give me your contact information. My name is Riley Brown." Having said that, Riley handed me her business card. Looking at her business card, I was shocked. Surprisingly, Riley was the director of an internal medicine clinic called Brown Clinic. I'm a doctor, but I'm embarrassed to say that I've become dehydrated because I couldn't manage myself properly. I thought I was feeling tired since this morning, but there were so many patients. No, I'm glad you're safe, Riley. I also handed my business card to her. It was really good to be able to help people outside of counseling. I went home to my apartment with a refreshing feeling, but later I got a call from Riley and was invited to dinner. I thought I had done what any person would do, but Riley insisted on inviting me, so in the end I graciously accepted her kindness. The place chosen by Riley was a famous high-end restaurant. The atmosphere was very good and the food was very delicious. Riley, a pleasant woman, poured me a glass of wine and livened up the place with her witty conversation. While enjoying the delicious food and having a good conversation, Riley suddenly brought up this topic. "So, Sam, do you have a girlfriend or something?" "Me, I don't. Or rather, I'm ashamed to say, I don't have much experience with women." Riley seemed to understand my vague words. "Well then, why don't you meet with my niece? She's turning 28 this year, and I think she's a good age match with you, Sam." I was surprised at Riley's words. I was grateful to her for introducing me to this kind of matchmaking, but the truth was, I didn't think I had the luxury of being able to afford it. After all, my job wasn't going well, and I was even thinking about quitting. I was thinking about how to refuse, but in the end, with Riley's strong recommendation, I ended up meeting her niece on the following Sunday. Even if I did meet her, there was no guarantee that Riley's niece would like me. I never have been in love, and few women would be in love with me, a man who is not even flattering to them. Thinking about it made me feel a little more relaxed, and I headed to the hotel lounge where we were to meet. I arrived a little earlier than the meeting time, and as I waited nervously, I saw Riley. "Sam, sorry to keep you waiting. This is my niece, Yvonne. Nice to meet you. My name is Yvonne." I felt a strong heartbeat as soon as I saw Yvonne, Riley's niece. She was a tall, slender beauty with glasses, just my type. "Wow, she's beautiful." "My name is Sam Collins. Nice to meet you." Yvonne is a psychiatrist. "Sam, you're a clinical psychologist, so I think you'll have a lot to talk about. Now, you young ones, take your time." With that, Riley left the lounge with smiling. Sitting face to face with Yvonne, I was overwhelmed by her beauty once again. But there's no way a beautiful and successful woman like her, who's also a doctor, would consider someone like me. Yvonne must have reluctantly attended this matchmaking meeting because her aunt, Riley, told her to. In fact, Yvonne was dressed in a simple gray suit with natural makeup. Of course, Yvonne, who is beautiful to begin with, was still very attractive, but she didn't seem to be dressed up too much. She probably didn't want to have a matchmaking date with me. However, my conversation with Yvonne went surprisingly well. At first glance, Yvonne seemed cool, but in reality she was a very friendly woman with an exceptionally cute smile. "Haha, Sam, you're funny. As expected of a clinical psychologist, you talk so well." Saying that, Yvonne seemed to enjoy listening to my stories. It's been a long time since I've had a conversation with someone like this, as I've been quietly doing my office work at work. Also, since Yvonne is a psychiatrist, I learned a lot from her. Before I knew it, I was engrossed in my conversation with Yvonne and truly enjoyed this time. Even if it was just this once, I was honored to have a cup of tea with such a wonderful woman. That's what I was thinking, but to my surprise, she invited me to meet again. "I'd like to hear more about your work, so would you like to go out for dinner next week?" I was surprised by the unexpected invitation, but I decided to accept it. Just as my fun day was coming to an end and my mood was about to drop, her attractive invitation boosted my spirits again. But in reality, I feel like she's just inviting me out to eat as a friend, like a drinking buddy. There's no way a beauty like her would invite someone like me out to eat otherwise. I just couldn't shake off that feeling. I was taken aback because the restaurant we met at was more fashionable than I expected. There were many couples inside the restaurant. On top of that, Yvonne was dressed up in a beautiful dress and had her makeup done perfectly. It felt just like a real date. I was, as usual, dressed in a shirt and chinos, and I was so ashamed that I wanted to crawl under the rug. Oh, I should have worn a suit if I knew we were going to such a fancy restaurant. No matter how you look at it, I'm not matching up with Yvonne. And with the beautiful and glamorous Yvonne in front of me, more radiant than the first time I met her, my heart was racing. While admiring her beauty, I enjoyed the meal. That day, Yvonne shared various stories about her upbringing. When I was in middle school, my parents passed away in a car accident. Then, Aunt Riley took me in and I decided to become a doctor. Oh, that must have been tough. Yes, but now I'm happy. Although middle school was the lowest point in my life, I was able to recover from that setback by meeting a good mentor. Meeting someone can really change our lives. Still, your positive attitude is the reason why you're here now, looking so wonderful. Actually, I also met a school counselor in high school who inspired me to become a clinical psychologist. Really, I'm sure that counselor would be very proud to see you as a reputable clinical psychologist, Sam. Yvonne said that, but in that moment, my heart ached. I was trying to show her my good side, but in reality, I was not being recognized at all as a clinical psychologist. I was even considering quitting my job. I had initially thought I'd be happy if I could just stay friends with Yvonne, but every time we met, I felt special feelings budding for her. Recently, I have been feeling more and more like Yvonne was treating me as a potential romantic partner. I wondered why such a wonderful person would be interested in someone like me, but perhaps she was overestimating me. After seeing me try to present myself in a good light, discussing my work as a clinical psychologist, she may have misunderstood me to be an admirable person. But in reality, that's not the case at all. If I continue seeing Yvonne, I'll just become a huge coward. I should leave before we become any closer. Thinking so, I told Yvonne on our fourth date, we should stop seeing each other. I finally broke the news while we were walking together in a seaside park where you could see the beach. The moment I said that, Yvonne widened her eyes in surprise. Sam, what's wrong? Did I do something to offend you? No, it's not you, it's me. It's not Yvonne's fault at all. I confessed everything to her without hiding anything. Although I was talking about clinical psychology as if I was something special when I was with you, Yvonne, in reality, I'm just a worthless man who isn't valued at all in my workplace. As I was talking, Yvonne was quietly staring at me. I'm actually thinking about quitting now, and I'm nowhere near worthy of someone as wonderful as you. There are much better partners for someone like you than me. That's not true at all. I am who I am today because of you, Sam. What? I was surprised at Yvonne's words. But then, she told me a shocking truth. You might not remember, Sam, but we met once at the entrance exam briefing session for a correspondence high school. You and I did. Yes, it's quite embarrassing, but I was over 20 pounds heavier than I am now, so I probably look very different. What? That girl was Yvonne. It was only when Yvonne told me that the plump girl I met at the orientation before I graduated from high school overlapped with the slender Yvonne in front of me. I had no idea they were the same person. As I mentioned before, I lost my parents when I was in middle school. I started overeating due to the shock, and I became overweight. I was looked down upon at school because of it. That was one of the reasons why I stopped attending school and became apprehensive about men. Yvonne, you had such a past. She, too, like me, had a deep wound in her heart. To be honest, I didn't even feel like going to high school and wanted to keep shutting myself in at home. But when I heard your words at the entrance exam briefing session, I felt really encouraged. At that time, I reassured Yvonne, saying, I'm also going to graduate from high school in 4 years, but I believe that you'll have a fulfilling school life here too. I truly wished for her to find happiness, as she bore a gloomy expression. When my aunt suggested a matchmaking date, I wasn't enthusiastic at all. But knowing my date would be you, Sam, I was genuinely happy. I wanted to thank you for helping me in the past, but I didn't want you to recognize me from back when I was overweight, so I stayed silent. Yvonne confessed that when she'd previously mentioned being saved by a senior, she had been referring to me. That's why, Sam, please, don't say you're worthless. I love you, and because of you, I am who I am today. With these words, Yvonne gazed up at me through her glasses, her eyes misty with tears. She then nestled herself into my chest. Please, stay by my side, Yvonne. Unable to contain my feelings, I embraced her tightly. We returned to my apartment together and spent the night. It was a first for both of us, but we naturally merged our minds and bodies as one. I vowed to love her for the rest of my life. From that night on, I started calling her Vani, and we officially began dating. At the same time, I made the bold decision to quit my job at the mental health center. That didn't mean I planned to give up being a clinical psychologist. I planned to start all over again from scratch. It was my encounter with Yvonne that gave me such courage. The director of the clinic said finding a new job would be impossible, but I applied for school counselor positions and juggled work at several schools. Turned out, this work suited me better, and I was able to interact with many students as a school counselor. A year after switching jobs, I married Yvonne, and we built a warm family together. On our wedding day, Yvonne looked beautiful in her white dress. Even our Aunt Riley, who had been like a mother to Yvonne, was moved to tears. Seeing Yvonne as a bride makes me truly happy. As Yvonne's guardian, it must have been an overwhelming moment. For both her late parents and Aunt Riley, I vowed to make Yvonne happy. 3 years into our marriage, we were blessed with a baby boy, and our marital life was pure bliss. As we approached our 5th anniversary, we embarked on a new challenge. Aunt Riley set up a branch of the mental clinic and entrusted it to Yvonne and me. I intend to continue my work as a school counselor here. As we were watching over our sleeping son, Yvonne said, "We need to make this clinic good for our boy." I felt the same way. Our son might experience setbacks and heartaches in his long life journey. But it is in such times that people need to heal each other. As a clinical psychologist, I hope to deliver happiness to someone, even if it's just a little. With my beloved Yvonne by my side, I am confident that I can make this dream come true. I'm curious about what excites you, she said, spreading out that. Wow, this is incredible. To be honest, this is a really awkward situation. It's really embarrassing and somewhat pitiful for me to convey my feelings to her. But she is very serious, and facing her, I have no choice but to be honest with my feelings and body. My name is Zach Sullivan. I'm a fledgling comic book assistant who just moved to New York. I dreamed of becoming a comic book artist in the future, but I gave up because I lacked the knack for it. However, I was well suited for the assistant tasks crucial to constructing a comic, like backgrounds and inking, so I decided to pursue it. What does a comic book assistant do? I often get asked. The truth is, a comic book artist doesn't draw everything in their work. In any comic, there are characters, there's a background, dialogue, and various lines added to enhance the illustration. It's impossible for a single comic book artist to do all of these tasks. That's where we, the assistants, come in. While we can't draw eyes or expressions like the artists, we can handle backgrounds, clothing decorations, and the task of pasting patterned paper, called tones, even erasing pencil marks. So, us assistants help with the paths that anyone to some degree can draw. By the way, when we say inking, we mean filling it in with black. It's a technique used everywhere from hair to decorations, and it's one of our jobs as assistants. But even if we draw backgrounds and do various things, our names never appear. Still, I also have the desire to support hitworks from behind. With that aspiration, I became an assistant. In fact, I'm feeling a bit anxious as my assignment is going to change in a week. The artist I'm currently assisting broke his arm and can't draw comics. If there are no comics, we assistants have no job. When I was worried about what to do, the artist I was assisting suggested I become the assistant to an artist named Gabriella. Gabriella, recently debuted, is an artist with a serial in a men's magazine. Gabriella's comic seems like an adult romantic comedy with a little bit of a risque scene, but it's actually a very interesting piece full of humor and jokes. It's getting a lot of attention and has been nominated for several awards. So, why did I get the offer to become such an amazing artist's assistant? Apparently, my style of drawing is similar to Gabriella's, and she was looking for a male assistant. I was relieved that I wouldn't have to worry about my living, but meeting the comic artist always makes me nervous. So, today, I came to the department store to buy some nice clothes at least for the first time. But my wallet, it's gone. Unbelievably, I had dropped my wallet, a major disaster. It didn't have much money, but losing cards and my driver's license is a big problem. I retraced my steps to see if I had dropped my wallet anywhere, and that's when it happened. I found a woman holding my wallet near the cash register on the floor that sold men's and women's underwear. "Oh, that's my wallet." "Oh, good. Is it yours?" The petite and plainly dressed woman handed me my wallet. I was relieved that she had found it, and I received my wallet from the woman. She was wearing a worn-out, baggy sweatshirt, looking as if she had just stepped out in her house clothes. Yet, her shopping basket was filled with quite bold, rather daring underwear in reds and purples. Just to clear up any misunderstanding, I didn't intend to look. The basket only had underwear, and they were brightly colored, so they just caught my eye. She was wearing ragged clothes, but the underwear was her game changer. The stark contrast between her appearance and the items she was purchasing left me momentarily stunned, but all I could do was thank her for picking up my wallet. It seems she was about to turn it into the cashier's. "Thank you, you saved me." "No problem. I'm glad it found its way back to you. Now, if you'll excuse me." She bowed slightly and left. Maybe she's normally plain but wants to impress her boyfriend. I couldn't help but fantasize, and she left a strong impression on me. That's why I was so surprised to run into her again. I never imagined that the one who picked up my wallet was Gabriella. A week after meeting her, I had an awkward moment when I saw her in Gabriella's studio, where I was about to start as an assistant. She didn't seem to remember me very well, but she did remember picking up my wallet. It's strange how things work out. She laughed, still in her ragged sweatpants, engrossed in her work. According to the veteran assistant, she used to draw with ink and wore such ragged clothes so she wouldn't have to worry about getting them dirty. She's working digitally more and more these days, but she feels she can't really get into the zone unless she's in sweatpants. That's her basic style when she works. But apparently, she sometimes forgets to change before going out, and the neighbors look at her strangely. I can't deny it. My first impression was that she was weird too. "Oh, Zach, can you fill in this area for me?" Sure. She may be quirky, but all the work she creates are very interesting. It's not as well known as the weekly magazines because it's a men's magazine, but her name is gradually getting out there because she's been nominated for awards. It's not an exaggeration to say that this is a critical time, so it's a mystery. Why did she hire a new male assistant? From what I can see, they are not in dire need of assistance. I've been an assistant here for about a month, and I've noticed that the other assistants have been with Gabriella for a long time and can manage just fine without me. So I had my doubts. The reason became clear the next day. Zach, can I have a moment? Oh, yes. I was suddenly called by Gabriella. She's a quiet person and rarely speaks unless it's work-related. She's capable of having a conversation, so it's not a problem. But I was surprised because she had never spoken to me in the studio except to give instructions for the manga. I went to the room in the back. This is the reference room. There's a big table and various materials necessary for drawing manga are stored here, and that's where I usually search for materials. But for some reason, today the table was covered with flashy women's underwear. Dak, which one do you think is good? I wanted to ask which underwear would excite you. Gabriella told me something outrageous in a matter-of-fact tone. Because she said it so normally, I was the one who ended up feeling embarrassed. From the colors of the underwear on the table, it looked like some of the ones she was buying when I first met her. I thought she was buying them for herself, but it seems she bought them as references for her comics. Why are you asking me? All the other assistants in my studio are women, so I can't get a straightforward male opinion. I've been using the usual sexy scenes, but I'm running out of ideas. You're around the same age as my target audience, so your opinion would be helpful. I see. So that's why she was looking for a male assistant. Apparently, there used to be a male assistant, but for various reasons, he quit, and I was the one who came in. I understood the circumstances, and I accepted the reason why I was hired, but this was very awkward. Of course, this is just for drawing manga. It's not an indecent question, but for me, it's like revealing my preference in underwear to her. But Gabriella had a very serious look on her face, so as her assistant, I had to answer. Well, for heroine, I think black would be nice. Oh, black, but doesn't black look plain? The heroine of this work is cool, isn't she? Black has a bit of sexiness and is perfect for the image of a cool girl. But if the design is like this red one with a little lace, it also has a cuteness, and it leaves an impact when you see it briefly. I said that, pointing at the red underwear. It was a cute design with lace and frills, the kind of design I like. Watching me, Gabriella said, black. I thought men preferred brighter colors, but black does suit the heroine. Yeah, thank you. Thanks to you, I think I can draw a good scene. Gabriella seemed ecstatic as she said this, and quickly returned to her desk in the studio to start drawing with incredible fervor. She is the type of person who can't rest until she's drawn her ideas out, and I felt a sense of joy contributing to her work in some small way, as I quietly tidied up the materials she had laid out. Several months later, we found ourselves in a crisis. In the depths of winter, Gabriella had fallen ill, and we were facing the possibility that we might not be able to complete the manuscript in time. The manuscript had to be submitted by tomorrow, and we were in the final stages. But an unwell Gabriella was unsteady on her feet and certainly not in a state to draw as she usually would. Moreover, only at such a time, we cannot skip it because we have a project for the opening color pages. Just a bit more. Gabriella was doing her best to work while sticking cooling patches to her forehead. Only a few more pages. If she could just draw those, we assistants could handle the rest. But she was unable to draw because her hand was trembling. Gabriella stood up shakily with a feverish look on her face, and, for some reason, walked over to me and grabbed my shoulder. I hate to ask you this, but Zach, can you do the drawing? What? Both I and the other assistants were taken aback. It's our job as assistants to draw the backgrounds and the inking. Sure, we'll draw as much as you want if you ask us. But there are things that only the comic artist, the master, can draw. I can't possibly take on that role. I've done what's necessary, but there's one more page. Don't worry, Zach, you can do it. After all, it was your idea. With those words, Gabriella showed me the page she hadn't been able to draw. What? It was a scene where the heroine's skirt gets flipped up, revealing her underwear. What you might call a fan service scene. The heroine's expression, body, clothes, everything was drawn, but the crucial underwear was completely blank. It was just a plain, white underwear. When we talked about underwear, I thought Zach would draw the perfect underwear. for the heroine. But, just sketch it out. That's all you need to do. I can't think about the design right now. The truth is, a scene like this should have been drawn by Gabriella herself. I'm sure Gabriella wanted to draw it too. That's why she bought the underwear and even came to ask me for advice. But if she were to draw it in her current shaky state, the result would probably not be good. So, that's why she asked me to do it. It was a decision she made, prioritizing the quality of the work over her own desire to draw. Alright, but I'm just doing the design, okay? Moved by her passion, I agreed to her request and grabbed a pencil. Comic artists and their assistants naturally draw all sorts of things. Crowds of people, dense forests, animals, and sometimes even the human body in its natural form. So I didn't mind drawing underwear. But, feeling the pressure of having been chosen by her, I went a bit overboard. Because, when the manuscript that was barely finished in time was finally published in a men's magazine, while the story was certainly praised, the scene I worked on was pointed out as being clearly over-detailed LOL, and it became a topic of discussion, giving it an unexpected fame. I guess that can't be helped. After all, I wanted to make a peekaboo scene where the heroine looks as cute as possible and leaves a strong impression, and I worked hard on the design with that in mind. Even she was pleasantly surprised, saying, "You drew underwear that suits the heroine better than I expected." And now, I've ended up being in charge of drawing the underwear in our work. I wondered if it was really okay for me to be doing this. But, all the characters that appear in the work are my children. Don't you want to dress your children in nice clothes? And your underwear designs have been well received by the fans. Gabriella was so convinced of this. I'm glad that she's left the underwear design to me, and I'm getting better at drawing it, but I feel a bit awkward about it, especially since the other assistants tease me about it. Lately, I've even been given some pretty bold underwear as possible reference material. Just to be clear, I don't feel bad about this at all, so for me, there's no issue whatsoever. Thanks to this, I, who was once an outsider as a newcomer, could fit in. It was at that moment, "Zach, can I talk to you for a minute?" As it happened before, it was Gabriella who called me. I wondered if it's going to be another underwear talk. Would you like to grab dinner sometime? Heh. Well, you know, when I fainted you helped me a lot, and I haven't thanked you yet. Gabriella, as usual, said something outrageous with a straight face. By the way, when she said she fainted, she was referring to after the underwear incident. She fainted right after she finished her manuscript. All of the assistants besides me were women who couldn't carry her, so I ended up taking her to the hospital. Sure enough, she had a cold and was told to rest for a while. But Gabriella basically lived in her workspace, which only had a cot and a small kitchenette. I couldn't just leave her alone, so I ended up carrying her for a while. I'm sorry, Zach, for always causing trouble. That's okay, I'm not busy anyway. I remember having such a conversation, but it was quite difficult from there. Gabriella has quite a selfish side. I don't want to take medicine. I'll get better if I sleep. You're being given medicine because you won't stay in bed. Sometimes she would suddenly refuse to take her medicine and throw a tantrum. Other times, she would say, eating is such a hassle, and wouldn't even try to eat, so I reluctantly had to feed her. There was a terrible time when her fever slightly dropped. She declared, "I'm feeling better so I'll draw comics," and literally glued herself to the drawing table. No way, you still have a slight fever, right? There's plenty of time until the deadline. Please recover now. I don't wanna. If I don't draw now, I'll forget. You got sick because of your actions, so please accept it. I can't even count how many times we had this exchange. Recalling it now, I almost want to cry because of the hardships. So, what's it gonna be? Are you in or not? It seemed like there was a pause as I was reminiscing about the past after being invited by Gabriella for dinner. Gabriella was tilting her head in curiosity. Of course, I was pleased with the invitation, but I glanced at Gabriella's clothing. Sure, let's go. But no sweatpants. Can't I? No, please buy new clothes once in a while. I had a hard time looking at the worn-out sweatpants she was almost at her limit with. But Gabriella was oblivious and even dropped a bombshell by saying, "Okay, then Zach, you go buy some clothes. I'll tell you my size, and you can bill me for it later." Why me? Well, because we're going to dinner together, and I don't know what kind of clothes you would like me to wear. Gabriella tilted her head in confusion as I let out a heavy sigh. She doesn't understand men at all. Listen, Gabriella, that's something you ask a man you're interested in. Yay, that's why I'm asking you. Heh. I froze at Gabriella's serious expression. What did she just say? In context, it sounds like she's interested in me. Gabriella, I like you, Zach. I was wondering if I could wear the underwear that you like. Stop. I hurriedly cut off Gabriella, fearing another bombshell was about to drop. This person, she really is hopelessly clueless in every way. Okay, I get it. Just get yourself together for now, and please wear this. We can eat wherever you'd like. Do you mean anywhere I'd like? Then it might be a burger shop. That's fine. Let's go there. Gabriella, other than comics, she doesn't seem to care much about anything else. And she can be pretty clueless about the world, too. As a comic artist, I admire her, but when I look at her as a person, she's so worrisome that it's to the point where I feel compelled to keep an eye on her. I think it's about time for her to develop some human-like qualities. I remember thinking this as I stayed by her side, oblivious to the fact that in 6 months, I'd be dating this very artist. A woman named Gabriella Miller. Moreover, I had no idea that I'd be launching my own career as a comic artist. But at that moment, all I was thinking was how I needed to turn Gabriella into a decent human being, while I was busy drawing sexy underwear. Can I borrow your jacket? That classmate of mine, who's practically begging at my feet, is a notorious blonde bombshell in our class, or in simpler terms, she's quite a rebel. Why is she doing this to a normal, or even more plain than normal, person like me? Apparently, she forgot to wear that thing women usually wear. Looking at her pleading with such urgency, I couldn't help but give in. My name is Jacob Miller. I am a high school senior, like any other. By the time you reach your senior year in high school, you're probably thinking about college entrance exams. Being that my only talent is studying, of course, I'm doing my best to prepare for the SAT. When I go home, I study, and when I go to my tutoring sessions, I study. And of course, I study at school. But when the class assignment was shuffled in junior year, I ended up in the same class with an unexpected person to watch out for. Her name is Alyssa Parker. She is adored by everyone, a delinquent gal. It's worth repeating that she is a delinquent, otherwise known as a rebel. Her flamboyant blonde hair, long nails, and short skirts, and never tried to follow the school rules. And yet, she always manages to just barely avoid being held back, due to her attendance and grades remaining just good enough to pass each year. Moreover, since she participates enthusiastically only in school events, teachers are unable to suspend her from school even if they give her a warning. In actuality, she doesn't cause much trouble inside the school. But there are many rumors about Alyssa. She's undefeated in fights, or that she single-handedly took down a girls' gang, or that she's been involved with countless men. She's definitely the type I'd rather not associate with. Being a studious geek, I doubt Alyssa even knows I exist. Even though we're in the same class, we rarely talk. Her constant chatter during class is honestly stressful, but other than that, she doesn't interfere with me. I was not approached for conversation, and the semester ended just like that. Then time passed, and it was the middle of the second term. The second term is typically when school events like school travels are held, but third year we don't do anything that formal. However, our high school, and usually, has adopted a system of classroom duty rotation. It's a system where a boy and a girl pair are chosen by drawing lots, and they perform tasks like unlocking the classroom in the morning, airing it out and erasing the blackboard. I usually arrive at school early, so the duties aren't a bother to me. But the problem is, I was paired with Alyssa. She probably won't come. After all, she's usually either sprinting into the classroom at the last minute or she's late. Moreover, it's raining outside. I would probably have to do all the tasks alone today. With that thought, I unlocked the classroom. I waited until the time the duty person should arrive, but as expected, she didn't show up. So, I unlocked the classroom alone, aired it out, and was erasing the blackboard when I could hear someone running hurriedly. Was it the classroom duty person from the next class who was late? As I was thinking that way. Eek, for real? You're already here. I'm sorry. I'm 10 minutes late. Unbelievably, Alyssa, the notorious latecomer, dashed into the classroom. Taken aback by her unexpected appearance, I dropped the eraser I was holding. Though she was 10 minutes late, it was still earlier than her usual arrival time. And now, she realized that she was late and apologizing to me. Wait, Alyssa. As I stood there in bewilderment, she tossed her near empty backpack onto her desk and asked, "Oh, you've finished everything already. You're fast. Is there anything left to do?" Well, I haven't changed the water in the vase yet." "Okay, I'll do that." Alyssa grabbed the vase and exited the classroom. It was a shock to me that Alyssa had shown up at all, and I only noticed she was soaking wet as she was leaving the room. She must have run to school, thinking she was going to be late. I hoped she wouldn't catch a cold, and yet, she took an extraordinarily long time to come back, even though she just went to change the water in the vase. I wondered if something happened, but we weren't exactly friends, so I sat down at my desk and started studying. Then, 10 minutes later, hey, I heard a voice from behind me. It was coming from the door at the back of the classroom. Turning around, I saw her looking awkwardly in my direction. Holding a vase, when our eyes met, she asked, "Will you listen to my request?" A favor from her, for me. I turned to her in confusion. Upon closer inspection, her face was flushed. On top of that, she was acting strangely. What? Then she put the vase on a nearby desk, quickly slid over to me. And then she suddenly bowed down deeply. "What? Can I borrow your jacket?" she exclaimed in a voice almost like a shout. "My jacket? Why? If you're wet, you can change into gym clothes." That was what I thought. She was wet and wanted to change clothes. It's fall now. There's a risk of catching a cold. So, I thought gym clothes would be a better option. I suggested that to her. But she didn't look up. Silence lingered for a while. If it was the usual bubbly and noisy Alyssa, she would have replied something like, "Oh, that might be a good idea." Something was wrong. As I was thinking that, she murmured, "Yay, that's it. I forgot to put that on, because I was in a hurry. I thought I was going to be late." What? She dropped a shocking statement in desperation. Being at a sensitive age, I was too surprised and let out a cry. By that, she meant the innerwear that supports her bust, right? I was confused. But then I understood why she couldn't look up. She just couldn't. Because her uniform was wet and see-through. Nothing stood out on her see-through back. There's no sign of that which should be there. That means she's wearing nothing underneath her uniform. I hurriedly took off my jacket, draped it over her, and then turned my back on her. Indeed, there was no point in wearing her gym clothes in this state. The blazer was thick and would easily hide the front. You can wear this. Is your home far away? One stop by train. In that case, why don't you go home wearing that for now? If you leave now, you should be able to come back by second period. It would indeed be tough for a girl of her age to attend class in this condition. especially since there's PE class today. When I said that, she whispered, "Thank you." Then she grabbed her bag and left the classroom. Of course, afterward, I was asked by my friends and teachers, "What happened to your jacket?" But if they knew that I lent it to Alyssa, I would have to explain the whole situation. So, in a split second, I blurted out a stupid joke with a straight face. I got mugged. Since I'm not the type to say such things often, it was well received by those around me. I lied to the teacher, saying I didn't manage to get my laundry done in time. But my silly joke would later come back to haunt me, because Alyssa appeared during the second period. Even though I said that, honestly, I thought Alyssa would play hooky today. She was attending class properly that day. "Oh, Jacob, I'll wash and return your jacket tomorrow, okay?" Alyssa shouted out loud, and coupled with my joke, a surreal joke about Jacob, who got mugged by Alyssa, spread like wildfire. And when Alyssa, who had heard that, got extremely carried away and said, "Jacob, lend me your notebook." "Hey, hold on, that one's not finished yet." She started to tease me like this, and people around me started to tease, "Jacob is being mugged by Alyssa again today." So, I created a notebook for Alyssa so that she could take it. Getting it back every time is a hassle, and while my notes are verbatim from class, the notebook is simplified so even Alyssa can understand it. They say you need 3 times the knowledge to teach someone, and that's exactly true. When trying to break things down so that they can be understood at Alyssa's academic level, I felt my lack of knowledge. I need a good vocabulary, too. Making Alyssa's notebook was fun in my life of repeating the same studying every day. I wrote thinking that even Alyssa would understand if I wrote this clearly, but she would always ask, "Hey, Jacob, what does this mean? I don't understand just this part." Every time she said that, I was filled with determination to make a notebook that was even easier to understand, and that she wouldn't say she didn't understand. Well, initially, I had just prepared a notebook that was simplified very basically. But, you see, I tend to get a bit obsessed. I just can't help but put a lot of effort into it. After all, if I'm going to show it to someone, it would be better if it can help them study. That's why I ended up getting a bit too fired up. But it also helped me study, and I had fun doing it, so it's all good. Thanks to Alyssa, I've had more opportunities to talk with my classmates too. As we continued like this, time flew by, and the second semester was about to end. By the time we finished our final exams and were just waiting for them to be returned, I came down with a fever and had to stay in bed. There's not much class left after the exams are returned, so I thought it was kind of a blessing in disguise that I fell sick during this period. Fortunately, my high school is near my home. In fact, I chose this high school mainly because it's near my home. I figured I'd have someone bring my test home. Then I could check the parts I got wrong. With that in mind, I sent a message to a friend. "Hey there, are you okay, Jacob?" Surprisingly, the one who came was Alyssa. "Why, Alyssa?" I was shocked when I got a reply from my friend saying, "Alyssa has taken your test." It seems Alyssa came to deliver my test in place of my friend. "Sorry for the trouble, thank you." "No worries, I also had something to tell you, Jacob." As I sat up, Alyssa handed me the test paper. The score was about as expected, and I was satisfied. But upon closer inspection, there were several other answer sheets behind mine. The scores were 70 and 68 for the math and English tests, respectively. This wasn't my answer sheet. What the? Incredibly, that answer sheet belonged to Alyssa. Alyssa was more prone to failing grades. Moreover, I distinctly remember Alyssa failing consistently in math and English, the subjects Alyssa struggled with the most. Forgetting about my fever, I was so surprised my eyes nearly popped out. Seeing this, Alyssa flashed a wide grin. "Remember the notes you gave me, Jacob? They were incredibly easy to understand, and you even explained parts I didn't get, so my grades shot up thanks to that. It's all thanks to you, Jacob, thank you." With that, Alyssa wore a sparkling bright smile, unlike anything I had ever seen. Seeing that smile, I felt extremely happy. Of course, my part in lending the notes contributed to this, but it was Alyssa's hard work studying that ultimately reflected in the results. The notes were really easy to understand and interesting. I found myself studying at home before I knew it, and I wanted you, Jacob, to be the first to know about my test results. That's why I came over. Haha, you did great, Alyssa. From usually scoring around 30, that's incredible. Exactly. Now I can surprise my family. Having said that, Alyssa turned to me again and suddenly bowed in appreciation. "You know what? I know I'm being presumptuous, but could you teach me next time?" Well, sure. In my mind, I had already been teaching Alyssa when I was showing my notes. But for Alyssa, it seemed different, and being directly asked for help was pleasing. So, once I recovered and returned to school, I started supervising Alyssa's study after school. After all, I would only be studying if I went home anyway. Since I started teaching Alyssa, my own careless mistakes reduced, and my grades improved too. But what surprised me was that Alyssa was smart. Thinking back, besides math and English, Alyssa barely managed to pass the other subjects, avoiding failing grades to prevent being held back a year. In other words, if Alyssa actually studied, Alyssa could improve considerably. While it's not realistic to catch up several years' worth of studies in a few months. But after developing a habit of studying, perhaps during winter break at my house, Alyssa managed to score over 70 in math and English, over 80 in other subjects, and gained the ability to attend an average university. Oh, by the way, there was absolutely nothing fishy about our study sessions at my house. I'm a guy, after all. I had some expectations, but surprisingly, Alyssa's defense was tough. Rumors of her being involved with multiple guys turned out to be completely false. The rumor that she never loses a fight seems to be true, though. If I'm going to kiss, it has to be with my lover. That's what she used to say while fiddling with her nails. So I was not in her eyes. But then, out of the blue, "Would you mind if I kiss you, Jacob?" At our high school graduation ceremony, while everyone was signing yearbooks, Alyssa said that to me. "What, you mean? Ha ha ha, you're too insensitive. Even I would feel something after spending so much time with you." Alyssa laughed as she said that, but her face, it was redder than the time she forgot to put that. She looked so adorable that I pulled her out of the bustling classroom during our graduation ceremony and took her to the relatively empty courtyard. What? Is this what I think it is? A confession? Alyssa was trying to hide her embarrassment with her usual light-hearted remarks, but her eyes were darting around and her face was beet red all the way to her ears. She's not really one for serious talks. I knew that, but as a guy, I wanted to look cool. Yeah, that's the plan. I mean, I like you, Alyssa. When I said that, Alyssa started to mumble. No, she was grinning and trying to hide it, and she made a weird face while saying, "I'm happy. This isn't a dream, is it?" with a shy smile. I gathered up all my courage and kissed her. It was my first kiss, and it's still fresh in my mind. Even now, 10 years later. Hey, what are you looking at? My high school yearbook. It's been 10 years since then. Now, we're both 28, married, and living together in a small apartment. Although we'll be moving into a house soon. So, while packing, I found the yearbook and started reminiscing about old times. Yikes, that's my embarrassing past. No, throw it away right now. All your photos are from when you were a Jersey Shore girl, aren't they, Alyssa? Stop, don't look. Alyssa, who used to be a flashy party girl, had transformed into a sophisticated college student after high school graduation. We went to different colleges but would teach each other the classes we attended, sharing our knowledge. Of course, we went on regular dates too. So for Alyssa, who had left her partying days behind, the yearbook was a reminder of her embarrassing past. But for me, it's a cherished memento, and I have no plans to throw it away. Hey, don't get too excited, you'll startle our baby. That's true, Alyssa said as she rubbed her belly. She's working hard to nurture the fruit of our love. That's something I can't do. So instead, I'm determined to protect Alyssa and our soon-to-be-born child. With that resolve, I closed the high school yearbook and gently stored it in a large box full of family albums. So, how is that? Your subscription to our channel encourages us to continue producing content. See you in the next video. Are you okay, getting this wet? I found the woman I always meet just in time for the last train, crying on a bench at the taxi stand, drenched in the rain. I instinctively called out to her, deciding to share a taxi and drop her off at her home. Maybe it's because we see each other every day. Despite it being the first time we spoke, I felt a natural sense of closeness, as if we had been talking all along. My name is Ricky Henderson. I'm 37 and work in sales. My workplace manufactures women's clothing and bags, and my job is to promote these products to our clients. But because we deal with women's products, there are a lot of women both at work and among the client representatives. Over half of my colleagues are women, with many being married and mothers. My mentor and direct supervisor retired last year, and a female supervisor transferred in from a different department. The new supervisor favors female employees who are married or raising children. She's flexible when children are sick and employees need to call off work, and she's good about reflecting paid time off requests. However, she is quite strict with single people. Ricky, you're alone when you go home, aren't you? Since you have nothing else to do, I'm leaving this task to you. Today, like always, I was burdened with extra work by the supervisor and was swamped with overtime. Recently, it's been especially bad, with me working overtime almost every day for a month. It was so unreasonable that I even argued against her. Even I want time and space to do house chores like laundry and cleaning. But the supervisor glared at me. Laundry, cleaning, you can do that on your days off. Other people also have to take care of their children and prepare meals on top of that. I was taken aback by her harsh tone and couldn't say anything back. Isn't this discrimination against unmarried people? I won't lose to that unreasonable supervisor. I kept murmuring to myself as I worked overtime day after day. I'm a stubborn person. But that doesn't mean I can work endlessly. I've been barely catching the last train for several days now, feeling immensely tired and sleep-deprived. Today, as I rushed to the station just in time for the last train again, I saw the familiar woman. Oh, it's her, reading a thick book again. I wonder what she's reading. I end up staring at the woman because I'm curious about something that doesn't really matter. It seems she sensed my gaze because she looked back at me, and our eyes met. In a panic, I averted my eyes and looked down at my cell phone. Lately, we've been seeing each other almost every day at this late hour, right before the last train. I'm sure she must have recognized me by now. I wonder if she finds it suspicious that I keep staring at her. Despite my worries, I find myself looking her way. Like me, She always arrives at the station just in time for the last train, engrossed in some thick book. Not only that, but there were also moments when I caught her quietly shedding tears while looking at her phone. I wonder if she's also being dumped with work by her boss or someone. I can't help but speculate about her. To me, she's a figure of interest, and I find myself watching her whenever we meet. One day, I was fighting against overtime as usual, right up to the last train. But it was raining heavily that day, like an overturned bucket. You've got to be kidding, I didn't bring an umbrella. Muttering to myself, I ran through the rain to the station. No sooner had I reached the ticket gates than the last train pulled away. Crap, not my day, I grumbled, heading to the taxi stand. There, on a bench, I saw a familiar woman crying in the rain. Of her, why is she crying? Drawn to her, I approached and asked, "You're soaked through. Are you okay?" "Oh, I'm fine. Don't worry about it," she said, hiding her face. "You don't seem okay. You might catch a cold. Are you heading home now? Where's your place?" I found myself speaking naturally in her presence. Maybe because I see her every day. Despite it being our first conversation, I felt a natural closeness to her as if we've always talked. "I live in Huntington," she replied through her tears. "I live there too. I'll share a cab with you part of the way." I decided to somewhat assertively join her. When she got in the taxi, she told the driver her destination and spent the whole journey crying alone. While I was concerned, I didn't dare to ask her anything. "Here, you can use this to wipe your eyes." I offered her my handkerchief and saw her off as she headed home. I went to work as usual the next morning, again clocking out just in time for the last train. However, for some reason, she was nowhere to be seen. Could she have caught a cold? I found myself thinking, and kept an eye out for her at the station. One day, my supervisor suddenly asked, "Could you handle the ab market negotiations? An urgent matter came up and I can't go." "But it's your responsibility, isn't it?" "How far have the negotiations progressed?" "I'm not sure about it since I'm not in charge," I responded. "Just read the materials, you'll be fine," my supervisor said before leaving the office. Ab Market is an online retail company based overseas that sells clothing and bags. With a computer or cell phone, anyone can purchase their products from any part of the world. It's a great honor to have our products in their service. Therefore, mistakes and rudeness aren't acceptable. I went to the client as a replacement for my supervisor but ended up listening to complaints about her. That lady is always late with her responses, and her handling is careless. Our president is the same. Both of them are slow and really sluggish when it comes to work. The client's representative complained not only about my supervisor but also about his own president. The representative had been much more polite and kind when I had previously visited with my supervisor. But on this day, he was evidently irritated, and the negotiation ended without a deal. I gave up and decided to return to the office. As I walked out of the meeting room and into the hallway, I passed by the woman I'd shared a cab with recently. When I looked surprised, she also looked surprised and bowed, saying, "Oh, it's you. Thank you for the other day." Then, in a rush, she took out her business card and handed it to me, saying, "I apologize for not introducing myself sooner. I'm Emily, the president of Ab Market." "What, you're the president?" Taken aback, I handed her my business card in return. "I'm Ricky from BC Apparel. My father, who was the former president, fell 2 months ago, and things have been chaotic. I couldn't introduce myself sooner. I'm sorry." Emily, as she was now known, apologized again and then whispered softly, "I'd like to thank you for the other day, so if you have a free day, could you call me at the number on my business card?" No, there's no need for thanks. I didn't do anything special," I replied modestly, but Emily looked a little sad. but I still haven't returned your handkerchief. Could you find some time for me?" Despite being the president, Emily seemed so timid and humble. Without thinking, I replied with a resounding, "Sure, I'll contact you again." Fast forward to a few days later on a Friday night. I had arranged to meet with the president of a client company at a renowned fine dining restaurant. The place was known for its high-end service and food. I had never been to such an expensive restaurant before. What's more, I had no idea that the woman I had been seeing at the station was the president of my client. I headed to the restaurant with a mix of surprise and shock. I was so nervous and didn't know what to talk about. Then, Emily, as she asked me to call her, broke the ice by saying, "I know we just got here, but would you mind listening to my problem?" "Go ahead. Please tell me anything," I replied in a surprisingly energetic manner due to my nervousness. I was an ordinary employee of my father's company before my father, the former president, collapsed 2 months ago from a cerebral hemorrhage. Then I was put in charge of the president's business. I listened to Emily's story and suddenly remembered her reading a thick book at the station just before the last train. "That's why you studied every day." I was satisfied in my mind and asked, "How is your father?" I asked Emily. "His life is not in danger, but he's bedridden and can't move or speak," she said. I felt a cold sweat trickling down my back. I felt I had asked something I shouldn't have. She continued, "My mother passed away a few years ago, and I have no one to rely on. The employees say I'm not dependable, and my relatives tell me I'm not cut out to be a president. I've been feeling down." Emily shared her troubles while wiping away her tears. "Because they think I'm not reliable, my relatives are trying to set me up with a guy who runs a company in the same industry. They're suggesting I should marry him and merge the companies." Mergers, marriages. Do your relatives decide all those important things? I found it hard to believe what Emily was sharing. But Emily, wiping away her tears, said, "My father can't speak, and I'm too timid to oppose my relatives. The man they've set me up with is very arrogant, and his harsh messages make me cry every day. I don't want to ruin my father's company, but I'm constantly worrying about what I should do." Her words reminded me of the time when I saw her crying at the station while looking at her cell phone. You shouldn't have to deal with work or marriage alone. You should firmly refuse anything you don't like. I gave her the best advice I could. Emily wiped her tears and gave a small smile and said, "Thank you. Just talking to you has made me feel a little lighter." Since that dinner, whenever we both had time off, Emily and I started to go out for meals together. I was worried about her and just couldn't leave her alone. I felt I wanted her to share everything with me, even her worries. "When I talk to you, Ricky, I feel at ease, but I'm sorry. I keep complaining about my work every time we meet. Aren't you tired of it?" Every time we went out to eat, Emily would check on my well-being before we parted. "No worries, I feel trusted. And by the way, you don't have to speak formally. You can just talk casually with me." "If I'm going to talk casually, Ricky, you should too. I'd be happy if we could become closer." Her innocent smile made my face turn red up to my ears. I found it comforting to watch Emily as she spoke energetically or seriously, and I just nod along. She seemed relieved when I told her about my work complaints and private marriage concerns. Emily was both a business associate and a friend. Our unusual relationship continued for a while, and we shared various stories with each other. Emily was gradually becoming more capable of handling her presidential duties. Watching her growth was a great joy for me. Today, I made my way to Emily's company again, pushing forward discussions with the person in charge. The president, who I thought had finally gotten the knack of working efficiently, is often seen smiling at her cell phone during work. Did she find someone special? She's so transparent. Now, I find myself able to hear these complaints about the president with a smile. Most likely, the reason Emily is grinning at her cell phone is because she's looking at the messages I've sent her. I found myself becoming more and more aware of how I should treat Emily, who was often perplexed. Emily, you shouldn't be looking at your phone during work. The person in charge is having a hard time. When I told her that during our dinner, her face turned red in surprise. Oh no, were the employees watching me? How embarrassing. Despite being the boss, I find it adorable how she has such unguarded moments. Ricky, you always see right through me, and you're always correcting me when I mess up. To her, who said this with a wry smile, I conveyed with a serious look. I like you, Emily. I want the person I like to be even more wonderful, even at work. Amidst her flustered and blushing state, I found her endearing and, once again with a serious look, expressed my feelings. I would like to support you not only in your professional life, but also in your personal life as your lover. She blushed bright red up to her ears and nodded, yes. That was the start of our romantic relationship, and it triggered my decision to transition to her company. I didn't switch jobs just because of my lover. I was already exhausted from the unreasonable demands of my previous boss and had been considering a job change. We're striving to support each other as good partners in both work and personal life. Fast forward a few years, we'd get married. As our life stage changed, I also stepped up at work. Now, as her executive assistant, I support and oversee my wife's work from the closest perspective. I want to support you throughout our lives, both at work and in personal life. When I say this, my wife responds with a smile. I'm glad to have met you. Let's support each other in both work and personal life. A woman I met at the subway station and had always been intrigued by. Now, as my dear wife and partner at work, I hope we can continue to support each other. How was that? Your channel subscriptions serve as motivation for our production. See you in the next video.